the last time someone looked at you after you shared a dream, a vision, a goal that you had as if you were crazy? When is the last time someone told you, oh, it's hard to do that. Oh, you can't do this. Do you have this, and this? Well, if you don't have this, and this, then you're not going to be able to do that. I submit to you that if this has never happened to you yet, you have not dreamed big enough. You have not had a goal big enough. You have not had a vision big enough, because the masses are typically going to say, when you have a lofty goal or a lofty aspiration, you must be crazy. You can't do that. How you gonna do that? Why? Because they do not have the spirit of delusion. But delusion, my friends, is what is necessary to go beyond the limits of where you are to accomplish the big thing that you want for your life. I recently listened to Queen Latifah. This is the graduation season, and I love to listen to the keynote speakers that they have, because they're always inspirational, and they have good nuggets of wisdom that we can use for our futures, even those of us who are more seasoned. And they also share a little bit about their journey to success, which outlines typically that it was not an easy road. And in addition to that, I had the pleasure of watching the Michael movie a few days ago. And oh my goodness, first of all, if there's an Oscar to be given for Best Actor this year, it needs to go to Jafar Jackson, because I felt like I was watching Michael. So that's just an aside. Jafar Jackson, absolutely amazing. But as I'm watching the movie, and as I don't want to give it away for people who haven't seen it yet, but you do want to go and see that. Michael Jackson had a spirit of delusion. After the Jackson 5 accomplished a certain level of success, he was ready to go beyond that. And he said, I can see me singing to just hundreds of thousands of people, and I can see me entertaining the world. He believed that music was the medicine that the world needed in order to just heal emotionally. And he believed that he was that person to bring that healing to the world. In fact, he made the song Heal the World, right? So if he hadn't had that spirit of delusion, of thinking beyond what they had already accomplished, which was great in and of itself as the Jackson 5, we never would have come to know Michael Jackson in the way that we knew him, as an amazing superstar, as a fantastic artist, right? And so it's the same with us. Are we making sure that we operate with a little bit of delusion? I've told my daughter-in-law and my son, one day we were out, I think we were eating somewhere, and I said, you know what? I bet people think I'm crazy, because I'm putting stuff out here. I'm sharing things about leadership. Some people didn't know that I had been a leader in corporate America for several years. Not only had I been a leader, but I had taught leadership for several years before I started the World Class Training Institute. So I bet for some people, they're looking at me like, what is this girl talking about? And then to go beyond corporate America and say, you know what? I can take these skills that I have learned over the last 15, 20 years in corporate America and go and teach corporations throughout the country and hopefully the world, right? It took a spirit of delusion to even take the first step. Why? Because I didn't have any contracts. I didn't have anybody calling me to say, hey, you know what? You can make this happen. I didn't have anybody saying to me, Dawn, other than God, because He's the one who told me to graduate, saying to me, nobody in the physical sense, physical realm, coming to me and saying, Dawn, now is the time. In fact, whenever I would share with my friends or my close family what I was doing, they wouldn't necessarily be discouraging, but encouraging was not what they were either. It was kind of a lull, like, okay, yeah, all right, well, right? Nothing to say, oh, go girl, you can do this. I know you've got this. This is amazing. Yes, you will succeed. So that spirit of delusion had to come from within to say, I know I can do this. I believe I can do this. Although there's no physical evidence other than my skill set as a facilitator and my knowledge of leadership that says that I can run a business and still be in business almost 7 years running the World Class Training Institute. No evidence saying that. And so I want to talk for a little bit. I'm going to share Queen Latifah's piece, but I'm also going to share some information on delusion. And I want y'all, as you're listening to this, to really think for yourselves about what, as they say, big, audacious goal do you have? What delusional aspiration do you have? And what are you going to do to walk that thing out, even if the evidence is to the contrary that you will succeed? Because what is the definition of delusional? Well, the definition of delusional is holding fixed false beliefs despite clear evidence or proof to the contrary. Holding fixed false beliefs despite clear evidence or proof to the contrary. So when you're being delusional, you're having in that moment what's considered a false belief because there's no clear evidence that says that this thing is going to come to fruition, that you're ever going to be able to manifest it, right? I would never have said 8 years ago in 2017 when I was working in corporate America and thinking that I was very comfortable in my leadership job. And it was a good job, definitely, right? But I never would have believed that 7 years later, I would be a 2-time author. There was no evidence or proof to the contrary that I was going to be a 2-time author. Now, I will say for my first book, it was in my head to write back in 2011, but I hadn't actually written it. I wanted to write it, hadn't actually written it. But of course, COVID came, and that was the time when I said, now I have the time, I have the energy, and I'm going to go ahead and write this. Didn't know I was going to write a second one, right? But I knew back in 2010, 2011, somewhere around there, that I needed to write that first book that I wrote. So I knew I was going to be an author, but there was no evidence that that was going to happen. At the time, then that was delusional. And I wrote it, on President Obama's leadership. That was delusional. How you gonna do that, right? How you gonna do that? You've never written a book. How you gonna even get all this together? Delusional. I knew it needed to be written. And so I just had to figure out how it was going to be done. And I couldn't even tell a whole lot of people. When I started writing, I just came in my house, went in my house every day. Of course, we're in COVID anyway, but I wouldn't take any meetings that were not necessary. So that means I said no to a lot of people during that period of time. And of course, people want to meet and just connect because, of course, they want to stay moving in the midst of the shutdown situation. But I knew the goal that I had. So I had to not communicate to a whole lot of people what I was doing, because I didn't want the negative mindsets of others coming into my head telling me I shouldn't, I can't, I won't, all of that. I had to just walk that thing out. And sometimes when you're operating in that spirit of delusion, you have to go in silence, and the road can be lonely. Back to the Michael movie. In the Michael movie, he was in a room. I don't know how real that room was to what is real, what was real life. But in that room, he had sticky notes posted up with different sayings that were inspirational for him. And that's where he was making his music. And when he was making his first album, the person who was working with him, I believe it was his attorney at the time, was telling him, hey, we got to get out. We got to go do some media. We got to go do some news, et cetera, et cetera. And Michael said, no, I don't want to do any of that. I just want to do the work. And the guy said, well, it's got to be an amazing album. And an amazing album, indeed it was. So when you're in that spirit of delusionment and people thinking that you've got to follow the steps according to the way the steps have always worked, you've got to be so gutted in your spirit that this thing that God has given you, and I always say it's a God-given gift, you have to be so gutted in your spirit that you're not going to let anyone or anything take you off of your square. Don't let anyone or anything take you off of your square. Now, I'm going to play the video, just a little clip of the video from when Queen Latifah spoke, because it's going to set a little background for the next piece that I want to talk about. So here you go.
Then he said, and then just a few days ago, one of my best friend, her niece said it when she was being honored at a conference for being a young vice president of strategic marketing and a mother of two. They both were talking about success, and they both used the same word, delusional. They said you have to be delusional. You have to have delusional amounts of belief to think you're going to be a rapper and a business person. You have to have delusional amounts of belief and faith to dream beyond your wildest dreams. And that got me to thinking back on my life. When was I delusional?
And so, as Queen Latifah said there, you have to be delusional to believe beyond your wildest dreams. And that's what I want for you all as leaders, is to believe beyond your wildest dreams. When you step into an organization, it may or may not be set up in the way that you think it should be as a leader. But whether it is or not isn't going to be the ultimate determinant of how you will be viewed as a leader beyond your tenure in that organization. What's going to define your tenure, your quote unquote legacy as you're working in that organization, or as even you're leading your own business or leading in entertainment, if that's where your career is lying? What's going to be the determinant is your ability to have a delusional belief in what you can make this opportunity. You may not see what it is immediately in front of you, but what is your vision? And I often talk about it. What is your vision? How big is your vision? And what can you do incrementally to accomplish that? Queen Latifah in that speech also talked about how she was, I think it was Philip Morris was the name of the company. She had met with them and they said, oh, there's no way you can be a big movie star, right? And she said, oh, okay, that's what you say. So she started with a smaller company and incrementally began to grow as an actress to ultimately being nominated for an Academy Award. So again, it's about what you believe, not what everybody else believes. Now, as I said in a reel a few days ago, I quoted Emma Grede, who said, ambition has to find you working. So you can be delusional, you can be ambitious, but you've got to couple that with work. And so what Queen Latifah did by working and going from place to place to place, eventually your delusion, and in her case, her delusion, became her reality. And that's the other piece that we have to understand. We need to be delusional in our attempts to move beyond what we see. Is so important because that helps us to think bigger. And it's often something that is lofty. But if we do not couple that with a strong work ethic, then the delusion is only going to be a dream. I'll repeat that. If you do not couple the ambition and the delusion with a strong work ethic, then the delusion and the ambition remains a dream. So make sure that you go and do the work. I'm going to share one other piece with you on what Queen Latifah said during her speech. It says, be delusional enough to call yourself something that the world hasn't called you yet. Be brave enough to walk down the road that no one else can see. So we've talked about the bravery part. I want to talk a little bit about that. Calling yourself something that the world hasn't called you yet. So again, I'm one who listens often to and reads a lot, motivational, inspirational pieces. There's a gentleman named Grant Cardone, who's a sales guru, who talks about how you have to say the number that you want in terms of your business. Say that number as if it's already there. So you don't say, I want to make $10 million a year. You say, I'm making $10 million this year, or I made $10 million this year. Why? Because it puts in your mindset that the accomplishment is already there. And now you just have to align the work with the outcome that you set for yourself. So Queen Latifah saying, hey, her name is Dana, right? Born Dana. Queen Latifah is a name that she gave herself. She said, who was I to call myself queen when nobody else did? It's just like Muhammad Ali called himself the greatest before anybody else called him the greatest. And what did he die being called? The greatest. Today, we know him as the greatest. What do we know her as? The queen. So who are you that nobody knows yet? Even if you have not become it, you've got to say it so that other people begin to see it. They're not going to see it until you call it what you want it to be. I called my company the World Class Training Institute before I ever got my first client, because I called it what I wanted it to be. And I every day wake up to deliver on that promise for it to be a world-class training organization, which means that we're on time, which means that we deliver more than people expect from a training organization, which means that we are great business partners. All of these elements go into us being world-class. So think about who you want to be and align your work accordingly. And then the world will fall in line with you. So I want you this week to dare to be delusional. Dare to be delusional. If you have not come up with it yet, come up with something lofty that you want to accomplish this quarter, this year, in the next several years. Name that thing as if it's already there, and then walk that thing out. Because daring to be delusional is the secret sauce to extraordinary leadership. If you have not already, make sure that you subscribe, like, and subscribe to the World Class Training Institute, to the Leaders Lounge. I'm sorry. Make sure that you like and subscribe to the Leaders Lounge so that you can be notified every time that we go live. Do that right now. I'll wait 3 seconds. All right. Tell a friend about the Leaders Lounge. This is your place to get all of your leadership goodness, tips, tools, strategies, everything that you need. Make sure that you also go to the World Class Training Institute and you subscribe to our email list. It says they're worldclasstraining.net/grow. That's actually for our event that's coming up. Worldclasstraining.net is for our mailing list. So just take the grow off, worldclasstraining.net, join our mailing list, and also pick up my latest book, which is Unpacking Agape, the 7 Languages of Intentional Leadership. Language is best spoken by behavior. And this book outlines the 7 behaviors that leaders must demonstrate to be considered servants, which is what a leader is first, a servant. All right, so pick that up at worldclasstraining.net/agape. Worldclasstraining.net/agape. No leader should be without the 7 languages of intentional leadership. And at the World Class Training Institute and in the Leaders Lounge, always remember, when you are better, we're absolutely better. Take care and go be delusional.